Sitting on the park bench, eyeing little girls with bad intents. Hey, Aquila, drying in the cold sun, watching as the pretty Peggy.
Gilligan's Island was a comedy television series involving 7 castaways that get shipwrecked and stranded on an island, focusing on their attempts to escape, which always fails because of Gilligan's fuck-ups. The show ran for 3 seasons in the mid-1960s, but despite the short run, the show became a classic and aged well in reruns years later. In 1990, Bandai released a video game based on the series for the NES. You'll control Skipper, who is followed constantly by Gilligan. Each level, or episode as they call them in this game, is designed like a maze. You'll wander around, meet up with the other characters from the show who give you clues which help you to find items that assist you in achieving the episode's objective. All the characters from the show are included, except for Ginger for some reason. But she was just a conceited Hollywood bitch anyway. She would have been of no assistance other than eye candy and a distraction from getting off the island. Usually your only means of defense is punching, which is useless about 95% of the time. If you're facing off with these headhunters, you should be able to punch them, but all the animals on the island that are out to kill you for whatever reason, they're practically impossible to knock out. You pretty much have to avoid them. Gilligan stays behind you and contributes absolutely nothing, other than assisting you in some of these tasks like climbing a tree to get an item. At the same time, Gilligan also becomes the most frustrating part of the game. If you get just a little bit ahead of him and walk to another screen, he won't follow, and you have to go back and get him. This happens all the time, but it gets worse. There are a lot of holes that lead you to underground portions of the stage, and if Gilligan falls into one of them, guess what? You'll have to go down to retrieve him and find your way back up to the surface, because sometimes there's no ladder at the hole you descend. Sometimes you'll want to slip down one of these pits, but if you go down first, Gilligan won't follow. Instead, you have to pretty much lead him into it by walking around the hole and hoping your general direction will guide him down. It's such a stupid, cheap chore that the game makes you do. Not to mention that once you lose Gilligan, you'll get hit with a 2-minute time limit to find him, and once you do, the regular timer restarts. Oh yeah, by the way, you have a time limit in each level. Another part of it that sucks is that without Gilligan, you can't even talk to the other characters. They'll just mention that Gilligan's not with you, and it prevents you from advancing. I guess this gives you a better understanding of the frustration the castaways have with Gilligan after he fucks up one of their escape attempts. But that couldn't have been what they were going for, could it? If so, that's pretty fucked up. One way to avoid ripping the hair out of your head in frustration from all the Gilligan chasing is the rope power-up. If you use it, you'll lasso Gilligan and pull him to your screen. But once you run out of rope, you're fucked, so save up. Another power-up is food, which you can get at any time to boost up your life meter, which is measured in hearts. 10 is your maximum, and you start out with 5, and once you run out, it's game over. But you can continue on the level you left off at, and there's a password system. You can also extend the timer by grabbing hourglasses. All these power-ups seem to appear randomly, so I can't tell you when to grab them in the walkthrough, just grab them whenever they show up. The graphics are okay. They do a decent job of making some of the characters recognizable, while others look about as good as they can in the 8-bit era. And I know it's 2D 8-bit Nintendo, but the character models do have this cardboard cutout look to them that I think could have been a little bit better, and the animation in general is subpar. The backgrounds do look alright, but the problem is that all 4 levels look exactly the same. Sure, the mazes look different, but all there is tropical landscape on the overland and the cave underground. Same shit all 4 levels. It's very monotonous. What else makes the game monotonous are the mundane tasks that you have to take care of. I mean, some of it makes sense, like Marianne gets kidnapped by the headhunters, so you have to go get the club from the professor to kill the main headhunter and get the key. But in between that, Mr. Howell is deep in the bowels of the cave and wants to go for a swim, so he has you go get his bathing suit from Mrs. Howell. What the fuck? I'm the skipper, the commander of the ship. I should be running things here, not running errands for people while there are more important matters to tend to. On top of that, the enemies flat out suck. The land animals just run around hoping to knock you over, the birds swoop down from overhead, and the headhunters just punch and swing their clubs. Not a whole lot of variety there. The true enemy is figuring out the correct sequence of tasks within the time limit, so that might justify the weak enemies, but only if the boss battles could save it, and they don't. They just wander around striking you, and you have to smash them in the head with a club. There's less of a strategic element in these boss battles as there is tying your shoes. Velcro. So even though the controls are decent, between the lame enemies, the lame bosses, and the lame tasks that you have to take care of, the gameplay in this game is pretty, well, lame. Speaking of lame, so is the dialogue. I know that Gilligan's Island has some pretty hokey writing, but my god, they really turned the corner here. Gilligan will say, "I've got a bad feeling about this," to which the skipper replies, "Me too, but I always feel that way when I'm with you." Ugh, and it's constant too. Always the same lines over and over again. And even some of the same jokes and the little cutscenes get repeated. It's all very sloppy. And it would be even sloppier if they didn't give you a map in the pause menu. It monitors where you and Gilligan are at the moment, as well as any other characters you've already run into. If this didn't exist, then navigating your way through this would be a nightmare. One more complaint before I get to the walkthrough. The music sucks. Most of the soundtrack is just flat out annoying. The production quality isn't very good either, so even the rendition of the TV theme song that plays over the title screen isn't all that great. All the notes are just too stabby, it doesn't flow well at all. Speaking of not flowing well, let's take a look at the levels, or episodes. In episode 1, there's a storm coming, so Skipper gives everyone an assignment. The professor to fix the transmitter, Marianne to fix dinner, and the Howells to cut logs to build a hut. Mr. Howell refuses to do manual labor, because he's rich, not because he's old. So Skipper decides to get the logs himself and has Gilligan pick the spot to build the hut. Start out heading right, the only direction you can go, and maneuver your way between these rocks, or jump over them. These birds will swoop down at you. As long as you're in the air, they can't hurt you, so jump whenever you see one. Landing on the rocks and falling on your ass won't deal you any damage, it'll just slow you down. After advancing to the next screen, head right and it'll lead you to the professor, who says that Mrs. Howell is with Mr. Howell. Okay, that was some vital fucking information. What the hell are you a professor of? So head back out to the intersection you came from and head up. Jump over this ship, avoid the cheetah, and jump into this quicksand. Tap A repeatedly to stay afloat and make your way out. You'll get to the Howells. Mr. Howell says his wedding band is lost and doesn't know where it is, and Mrs. Howell says that the bird took the ring to its nest in the tree. Well, I guess we know now that Mr. Howell has Alzheimer's because his wife, who knows where the ring is standing right next to him, and he still doesn't know. So go back to right before the quicksand, head up, avoid the rocks, and head left. Jump into the water, tap A, and hold left to make your way across the flowing river. It's not easy to reach. If you don't, you'll get washed up down here, and you actually won't be that far from where you're heading anyway. Just stay on the linear path upwards and take the first path up. If you do make it across, keep moving left. If you head down this path, Marianne mentions that there's a tree up ahead with a bird's nest. That's where you want to go, so keep moving left, and the path you want will be right here. Crawl through the quicksand and you'll get to a tree that Gilligan climbs. He finds the ring, so bring it back to Mr. Howell, who gives you a jar of caviar. Mrs. Howell mentions a ghastly sound that she hears where the professor is. Rather than check up on him, she assumes you'll just do it yourself, so head back to the professor, who tells you that the gorilla and the monkey stole the transmitter and headed to the other side of the bridge. He gives you the club to get it back, since as the skipper it's your job to do everything apparently. So head back to where the river was and go right, cross the bridge, and be sure to stay on the same horizontal level as the bridge once you get across, because if you move, Gilligan will move too and fall off the bridge into the underground. You'll have to go down, get him, and you'll have to climb up this ladder and get back on land and find your way back. Otherwise, after crossing the bridge, keep heading right, walk through this quicksand, along with this river of quicksand, which is essentially the same as the regular river. You'll get washed up into the quicksand near the Howells. After this is the boss, the gorilla who stole the transmitter. Smash him in the head with the club. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Just smash his head and he'll pound his chest. Smash his head, he pounds his chest. Keep the head smashing and chest pounding going until he walks over to the corner and leaves the transmitter behind in a treasure chest. But then Gilligan steps on it and breaks it. What a doofus. So bring it back to the professor, who gives you a saw to cut the tree down. So go back to the tree where you found the ring earlier, cut down the tree, and bring the logs back to the spot Gilligan picked to build the hut, which happens to be the beginning of the level. So head back there and the episode is clear. Then you'll get a cutscene where Skipper wakes up Gilligan, pissed off at him because the hut got washed up. Skipper blames Gilligan for picking a spot so close to the water, but shouldn't Skipper or anyone else have said something before? I mean, everyone knew the spot Gilligan picked. Oh well. In episode 2, Marianne gets kidnapped by headhunters, so it's off to rescue the damsel in distress. Start out heading down, and take the next path down to the professor, who wonders where Marianne is. Yeah, thanks again, Professor. There's nothing else down here, so don't even bother going down there. I just wanted to show you another dumbass comment by the professor. When you start out, you really want to head right. Cross the river, avoid this hole surrounded by the rocks, cross this river too, and holy shit, a headhunter. Now's when your punches come in handy, because these pricks will show up here and there throughout the rest of the game. Punch them to stun them and they won't bother you. Sometimes they'll scare Gilligan, I guess, because he'll wander way off to the wall and just walk against it like a moron. You have to go back and get him for him to follow you again. So head down this path after you get across the river, head right and cross the bridge. Jump to avoid the swooping birds. You get to a split, head up, and Mr. Howell tells you there's a stone tablet with native gibberish on it. So lead Gilligan into the hole, head down and left to get the stone tablet. Bring it back to the professor, who can't translate it without his textbook of ancient South Pacific languages, which he's letting Mr. Howell borrow for some bizarre reason. He just said that the tablet had native gibberish on it, so obviously he hasn't been reading it. So go back to Mr. Howell to get the book, but he'll ask you to go get his golf ball that got stuck in the tree across the river, and then he'll give you the textbook. What the fuck, man? Marianne's life is at stake. Time is precious, old bastard. So head down to the other end of the intersection, walk through the quicksand, and take a left here. Punch out any of the headhunters that get in your way, take the second path north, and Gilligan climbs the tree to retrieve the ball. Bring it back to Howell, and he'll give you the textbook. Bring it to the professor, who gives you a club that one of the headhunters dropped. So head back to the river at the start of the level and let it wash you underground. Smash the headhunters and keep going straight. Head down this path, smash any more headhunters here, and you'll arrive at the boss, this large headhunter who fights you with his bare hands. You have to hit him in the head with the club. Just swinging it at any spot won't work. He'll knock you on your ass. So stand directly in front of him and bash his fucking skull in. After you get enough shots in, he'll wander over to the side and drop the treasure chest, just like the gorilla did. You'll get the key, which will unlock Marianne's cage, which you can get to by going back here at the beginning of the cave, head up this path, walk through the quicksand, head up at the intersection, and you're there. Gilligan struggles to unlock the cage before Skipper notices that he's putting it in the wrong hole. What the hell kind of joke is this? It's not like these Neanderthals have a real complex locking system. What other hole could they possibly be talking about? Anyway, so after that, you get a cutscene where everyone celebrates Marianne's return, and one of the female island aborigines falls for Gilligan, who wants none of it. So the third episode starts with the professor saying that there's still missing pieces of the stone tablet, which he believes may be a map of the island. So the objective of this level is to get the remaining pieces. Punch out the headhunter here at the beginning and follow the linear path to the right, avoid the monkeys, and head north. At the four-way intersection, head north again, and Mrs. Howell will ask you to go find Mr. Howell, who disappeared. So go back to the intersection, head right, up this way, up again past the fat aborigine that wants Gilligan's junk, and you'll find Marianne and 2 holes. Yeah, I'm not even gonna go there. Talking to Marianne is a challenge here, because they set her up right in between the holes, so it's not that hard to accidentally lead Gilligan into the hole on the right. Marianne just tells you that she thinks Mr. Howell went down one of the holes, so you don't even really need to talk to her anyway. Just go down the left one, after Gilligan of course, and even that process can be tricky with the lack of space to walk. Once you do get down, punch out the headhunters, head up this way and up the ladder, go left and take the first south path you see. Now this river is long, so you're going to want to stand as far up as you can, as close to the edge as you can, jump as far as you can, and tap A as fast as you can. Once you get across, jump to avoid the bats that swoop down, and you'll find Mr. Howell on the next screen, who wants to take a swim and asks you to go get his bathing suit from Mrs. Howell. What the fuck? He disappears, doesn't tell anyone where he's going, his wife is scared shitless, and it's all so he can take a swim in the cave. Senile old fart. So do as he wishes and go back to Mrs. Howell and get the bathing suit. Let yourself get washed up by the river, and head left right after where Gilligan's admirer is located. So get the suit from Mrs. Howell and go back to Mr. Howell and he'll give you a piece of the stone tablet. So once again, he held onto a key item and traded it to you for something stupid. You want to give the tablet to the professor, so let the river wash you past the aborigine broad, head right and take the north part of the fork to the professor. He'll give you the formula for the melting solution, which Marianne will make. So let the river wash you back down, head left avoiding the tigers and monkeys, take a right here and you'll end up coming back up at the four-way intersection by Mrs. Howell. So go back to Marianne and she'll say that to make the melting solution she'll need some nuts. Let the river wash you down here and head left this time and go down the hole. Head down this path and keep going left. Walk through the quicksand, watch out for falling chunks of ceiling, stop yourself from going forward if one does fall. Then climb back up to the surface. Head left and Gilligan will climb the tree and get the nuts. Head right past the pit you climbed out of and keep going till you get to the river of quicksand. Let it wash you down here, head right and you're back at the four-way intersection at the beginning. Bring the nuts to Marianne. She makes the formula and gives it to you to bring to the professor. When you bring it to him, he'll give you a new piece of the stone tablet and a club. I don't know why he's giving you the piece of the tablet. I thought he was the one putting it together, but oh well. Go back to the area where you climbed the tree, but instead head right, and this time take the southern path down here. crawl through the mud, avoid the rolling boulders, and you'll meet up with the boss, a bear. Same shit as always, stand in front of him and bash him in the head until he dies. Seriously, there's nothing else I can say here. I guess his strikes are different, so yeah, there's something different that separates him from the other bosses. When you finish him off, you'll get another piece of the stone tablet. Why this bear has it, I'll never know. So that's it for this episode. The castaways then help each other out in putting the pieces of the tablet back together. And it turns out it's just a stone sculpture that Gilligan made and lost a few days earlier. Jackass. In episode 4, Skipper sends Gilligan to catch some fish, and Professor tells everybody else that the native chief told him about a stone idol on the island that grants one wish to whoever finds it. And they kept Gilligan in the dark about it so he doesn't fuck up their chance to wish everybody off the island. Take the first path north you see, head right, go through the quicksand, be careful of these wolves, and head up north across the river to Marianne. She wants to make a pie, so she has you go down the river to get some coconuts. Yeah, the pie is really important in comparison to the stone idol, but whatever. Go down the river, head right, punch out the headhunters, and head down at this four-way intersection. Gilligan will climb the tree and get the coconuts. Go back to where you got washed up, head down here, move left, and you're back at the first northern path you took earlier to get to Marianne. Give her the coconuts, but she can't make the pie without a fire. Then matter-of-factly mentions, oh, by the way, Mrs. Howell has been kidnapped by headhunters, and she gives you a club. Nice. Take the river down, go right, head north at the intersection, follow the linear path to the hole, head right when you come up at this intersection, swim across the river, head north, and climb up the ladder. Follow the linear path and take the first path down south, and you'll fight the headhunter that kidnapped Mrs. Howell. Same fight as earlier. Bash him in the head, and when he dies, you'll get the key. Head down and you'll free Mrs. Howell from her cell, after they rehash the same wrong hole joke from earlier. Mrs. Howell gives you some money as thanks and asks you to go tell Mr. Howell where she is. So head back 2 screens and continue left and take the first path north to find Mr. Howell behind the quicksand river. Stay low as this river washes you upwards. He'll give you a check for $1 million for saving his wife. Go back to Marianne, who builds a fire by burning the money and has you tell Mr. Howell that dinner won't be ready for a while. So go back to him and he'll insist that he's starving and wants a piece of Marianne's pie. So go back to Marianne again, and she'll give you some coconut pie, bring it back to Mr. Howell, and he'll say that Marianne has the secret weapon. Must be quite a secret, because I don't know what the hell he's talking about. So go back to Marianne, and she'll give you the secret weapon, which is labeled in the inventory as some type of cross, and says that you must defeat the curse to get the stone idol. So go back to where Mr. Howell is, and let the quicksand river wash you up. Head left, carefully walk across this bridge, watch the boulders that roll towards you, and jump to avoid the bats. Head down the pit, watch out for the wild beasts, take the path down at the intersection, head down again, and let the river wash you up to the boss, which is the curse, or skeleton. Once again, this is the same strategy as always. Bash his exposed skull and try to take as little damage as possible. He's more difficult to hit than the earlier bosses, but there's not much else to smashing him over the fucking head, maybe getting some extra shots by hitting him as he gets back up. Eventually you'll kill him and get the idol. Skipper sends Gilligan off to get some fruit for dinner, while Professor says the magic words to get the wish from the idol. While Gilligan's scrummaging for fruit, thinking out loud he wishes he had a mountain of ice cream, and unknowingly gets the wish from the idol, once again following up everyone's chance to get off the island. It's a wonder they haven't killed him yet. So that's how the game ends, with everyone right back where they were, just like in the show. So then you get some text basically providing a cliffhanger for a future game, which thankfully never happened. And then a montage of some parts from the game while the credits roll. Gilligan's Island is very weak. The combat is ho-hum, the storylines are impossible to take seriously or find funny, the dialogue is gut-wrenching, and the gameplay itself is mundane. To sum it all up, this is not the game you would pick if you were stranded on a deserted island. And that wraps up this edition of Aqualung's Game Reviews. See you next time.